Okay, here we are at the beginning of the trail at the Sonoma Valley Regional Park, looking at some red oaks right on the valley floor. These are probably mainly coast live oaks with perhaps some genetic intrusion of interior live oaks. You see the leaves here are curved, convex, and the new growth especially does have some little spines, bristles on them. Lots of nearby seedlings, offspring here. They all seem to be about the same age, basically the same pattern. Through here, some coyote brush. This is the map at the beginning of the trail. We will be walking up from the creek. You can see on the left, about half a mile today. Here we have some magnificent specimens of white oaks, mainly valley oaks, but maybe with a little bit of Douglas oak or blue oak thrown into the mix. Here's one that didn't make it after the last fire. What's interesting, now looking south, is that if you look south and west, almost all of the canopy there is coast live oak. Whereas here, once you start moving up from the creek a little bit, most of the oaks are deciduous white oaks. Here is a view of Sonoma Mountain in the distance. Again, Jack London State Park, mainly coast live oak there. Evergreen all year round, which is always a nice contrast. In the winter, this is like a Schubert Winterreise landscape. Reminds me very much of a winter landscape on the East Coast. Here we are at the beginning of the Woodland Star Trail with some fine examples of coast live oak at the outer margins of the riparian corridor. As we walk up the slope, the soils are different. They're volcanic, mainly rhyolite, some andesite. There's some basalt in here too. These are generally termed the Sonoma volcanics, and from what I understand from the literature, the northward trend makes these volcanics here about the oldest in the valley, about 6 million years old or so. You can get some idea of the violence of these volcanic explosions by these huge boulders that you find throughout the area. These are not erratics. They were just coughed up and rolled down the slope and continue to erode. This is another oak that didn't make it from the Nuns fire about 6 years ago. Here is basically another blue oak here. What's interesting is as you go up in elevation, here too on the right of the trail, the oaks lose their upright and uniform spreading canopies as you find in the valley floor, and assume a morphology which is very similar to what you might find, say, in the in the foothills of the Sierras. The understory here is a pretty limited palette, actually, of Toyon, California buckeye, lots of buckeye here, which tells you that the slope does retain some moisture. And then, of course, a lot of manzanita, but a lot of things which are notable for their absence as well. No chamise, no coffee berry. Curious. Fairly large buckeye there in the distance. Some poison oak. Some of the blue oaks here have the typical form and color that you would expect with those kind of oval green leaves, but others, like this one, though I don't think we can get a very good picture of it now because it's getting late, have these darker, highly lobed leaves, which suggests hybridization, as I understand, with Oregon white oak. Sometimes these are called epling oaks. Another one of those California buckeyes ready to lose its leaves. It's interesting that they are summer deciduous, or I'm not sure what the term would be. Very different from the buckeyes in horse chestnuts in Europe, which of course lose their leaves in the winter. Here, the buckeyes lose their leaves to survive the hot Mediterranean summers. An interesting adaptation. Another one of these epling oaks. You can kind of see the dark green lobed leaves here. Here's a better look. Here's a California bay tree. It's a little out of place. One would expect it more down by the creek, but it wasn't so long ago that the creek probably ran right where we are now. Here we have a black oak. It looks to me like a pretty typical black oak. You find lots of them down by the creek. Here they seem to be competing with the blue oaks or the epling oaks for canopy dominance. Toyons and manzanita. Here we have madrone. In Canada they call these arbutus. What's interesting here is that they always seem to be in a kind of subservient position to the oaks, but if you go up to British Columbia, it's actually the madrones which are dominant, and the oaks serve as understory. Here again, no, this is a manzanita right here. Again here, this in-between form looks like an Oregon oak, Douglas oak cross. More of these hard to define oaks at the top of the knoll. Leaves tend to be darker, dark green, and somewhat lobed.